If you think getting fit means you can never eat out, never have fast food, and never share a drink with your friends, you're going to quit in 3 weeks. To actually hit your goals, you need a way to stay on track and enjoy the process. My name is N.K. Bardwaj, and the fundamental mindset shift you need to have to actually hit your fitness goals is that you can enjoy life. Because you should be judging the week and not a singular meal. What I mean by that is oftentimes people will do a great job with their diet, especially throughout the weekdays when things are busier. They're not really thinking about enjoyment and where to get fast food, etc. Then weekend comes around, their friends invite them out for dinner and they binge. Then after that, they think to themselves, okay, I just ruined a week's worth of progress. I might as well just keep going, and this is definitely not going to work. The moral of the story there is that over restricting yourself to think that you're going to be perfect every single day is just unreasonable. And it's far more important that you understand that, hey, there's some days that I'm going to be imperfect. That's okay. And let me just plan for that and include that in my plan, because it's impossible for most people to stay completely perfect throughout their fitness journey. Moreover, if you're anything like the average person who wants to be social, who wants to have those interactions, you need to accept that it's okay to let loose a little bit. Now, that does not mean that I won't require self-control. Like, the entire process of getting lean, being fit is hard. That is why most people are obese. If it was easy to get lean, then nobody would be obese, people would be healthy, and it wouldn't be as prized of an outcome. You wouldn't care as much about your fitness goals if they were easy. So it will take some self-control, some discipline, but you don't need to assume that you're going to need to give up your life for it. That is not the purpose of getting fit. It's to boost your life satisfaction, not take away from it. Now, the question that most people ask is, what if I do binge? So Saturday comes around, you go out with your friends, you think, okay, I've planned for this day, like it's okay, I'm gonna have a little cheat meal. That cheat meal turns into a very big cheat meal. You spiral out of control. Do not restrict yourself the next day. The reason you do that is because if you are that type of person and you binge one day, restricting yourself the next day is not going to change anything long term. I just mentioned, judge the week, not the meal. The overall weekly caloric intake that you have, the amount of calories that you eat throughout the week, the amount of calories that you burn, is going to really drive fat loss. Not if you went out of control one day out of the week. Now, if you do restrict yourself the next day, what can happen is you think, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of cardio now. I'm going to restrict myself. And then the nighttime comes around. You're so hungry, the cravings kick in, and then you do it again. So there's a decision you have to make here. Do you want to chase the idea that somehow you can like reverse what happened last night by doing more cardio, eating nothing, and then setting yourself up for failure later that night? Or do you want to just accept that that's a mistake that happened, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't even matter? So don't prioritize fixing that. Just prioritize consistency, because consistency is what's going to drive whether or not you hit your goals. If you are craving something tonight and you actually want that meal, you want that fast food, you want to go out and hang out with your friends, do it. Just know that if you consistently do that, then you will not hit your goals. And if your primary objective is to lose weight or to be healthy or get lean, then you should consistently be doing things that are around that goal. But that does not mean everything needs to propel you towards that goal. If anything, for most people, including myself, having that consistency, but allowing yourself to do things that are outside of plan is going to be far more sustainable, and you are more likely to succeed in an instance where you're enjoying the process rather than hating yourself. So that brings us to plan. The key to actually eating out and eating fast food and whatnot, going off of your regular dieting plan, is to plan out how you're going to approach that, so that in the moment when you're hungry, when you see that fast food in front of you, when you're craving stuff, you don't let yourself make decisions irrationally. You make the decision beforehand so that you can keep yourself structured, guided, and you'll actually feel good when you eat that fast food. You won't feel like, oh, I'm binging, I just ruined everything. You'll feel like I'm taking this structured approach to enjoying one night. That not only increases the satisfaction of that meal, but also makes it more likely for you to hit your goals. So, a common question is, how often can I eat out? The answer is, it's up to you. There is no magic number for me to come and tell you, like, you should eat out 3 times a week, 2 times a week, 4 times a week, etc. But what I will give you is a benchmark. So for myself, I'm currently maintaining my weight. So I tend to go for about 2 to 3 meals outside of my actual meal plan. So out of those 2 to 3 meals, 1 or 2 of them are going to be more like healthier alternatives. So for example, Chipotle is pretty macro friendly. Like obviously it's not the best thing in the world because of all that sodium, but if I am running behind or need a little quick meal or something like that, I go for Chipotle. If you are smart about the type of ingredients you get, you can get a really good bowl from Chipotle. If I go to a restaurant with my family or anything like that, going for a lean protein source and then working around that to make sure that you keep the calories low is also a great idea. But all in all, those 2 meals out of the maybe 2 to 3 that I eat out, I try to keep them tame so that I'm still hitting my maintenance calories and not going drastically over. Now, probably one meal out of every week or 2 weeks or so, I do have a cheat meal type of thing where I might not be focused on getting a healthy alternative. I might go to a fast food restaurant and get something that's fatty, fried, whatever. That is like a once a week thing for me as somebody who's trying to maintain my weight. And usually I can balance it out throughout the rest of the week because naturally I'm going to feel less hungry on those days, eat less, etc. If you are trying to lose weight, I would recommend an approach where you're able to stay on a weekly basis, you're able to stay under the caloric amount that you've set. So for me, the majority of my cutting season, I did a 500 calorie deficit per day. And then on the weekends, one day out of the week, I would eat at my maintenance. So that means 6 days out of the week, I'm eating 500 calories under. And then one day I'm eating at maintenance. And that day at maintenance would be for a cheat meal basically, but it'll still be calculated. So overall, I'm still losing weight. And I was also doing cardio to supplement that in case I do fall behind. But that's like a good benchmark for somebody who's very confused on where to start. Ultimately, though, it's up to you to decide how often you should be able to eat out. Now, banking calories is a strategy I used to do when I was cutting. So if I know that I'm going to eat out later tonight, I'm going to eat less throughout the day to reserve more calories for that nighttime. Now, I'll raise a little caveat in a second, but this is a good way to make sure that you actually have room to enjoy a meal later in the night. If you're gonna go out to a fast food restaurant or something like that, it's inevitable that if you want something you'll actually enjoy, you'll probably be spending 800, 1200, even more calories on that. So reserving that number of calories for the night is not a bad idea. However, if you're the type of person that's going to restrict yourself throughout the day and then in the night, your cravings are going to kick in and you're going to be twice as hungry. Your brain is just going to be craving food so much that you just give in and go way over. This strategy is not for you. So it takes a lot for you to recognize the type of person that you are and how to best accommodate your psyche into your decisions. So right now, since I have been on and off cutting for a while, I try not to restrict myself so heavily throughout the day because when I do that, I just feel like at night I'm like, fuck it, let me just eat. I restricted myself the whole day. That's not a good approach for me right now, but back then it was working pretty well. So banking calories are not a bad idea. Just try to not restrict yourself too much. Now, refeeds are a thing that get tossed around a lot, and people say that refeed is good for you to lose fat faster. Some people say it's not. If you don't know what a refeed is, it's basically like a diet break. So some people recommend if you are doing a prolonged diet over the course of weeks to months than every week having like one day where you eat a little bit over what your caloric amount is, kind of like what I was doing in the cutting season with eating at maintenance. I thought refeeds were optimal or the best way to lose fat. And the idea behind that is when you're depleting yourself throughout the week, then that one refeed day serves as kind of like a break in your metabolism and in the amount of glycogen your muscles have. So, inevitably, when you cut or when you try to lose weight, your metabolism is going to slow down because your body realizes that you're eating less calories. You're still going to lose weight, but over time, your metabolism will start to understand that. So, this refeed is thought to be like a break to that. And then another thing is if you are somebody that's lean and you don't have a lot of fat on you, your glycogen in your muscles or the amount of energy that's available is going to deplete as you eat below your maintenance calories. And therefore, you're going to have less energy to train. So, refeeding is a good way to top that out. All that set aside, the main consensus today is that research shows that refeeds are not as optimal as I once thought, especially. The only real benefit for a refeed is just psychological. So, I mean, if you do want to do like a similar type of structure that I did when I was cutting, one day of the week just eat at maintenance and the rest of them stick to your caloric deficit. It's not a bad idea, but that's just purely psychological to help you stay on track. There is no objective benefit to going over your caloric deficit in one day of the week, assuming that's going to burn fat faster. Now, macros and micros. When you do eat out, it's inevitable that you're not going to hit your macros and micros perfectly, and that's something you just have to accept. If you are the type of person that cares a lot about these two types of things, then honestly, unfortunately, either you don't eat out or you just accept that it's not going to be perfect, and you kind of just have to live with how best to fit things into your macros and micros. The way I like to go about things now is if I know that my dinner, for example, is where I get the majority of my calcium intake, then that's a micronutrient that I know I should maybe look for in some type of dairy product if I do go out to a restaurant. But if you're hitting your macros and micros well enough over the grand scheme of a week or so, you should be good. This goes back to the judge the week, not the meal, because that is the main point you have to understand when trying to enjoy your diet. And sustainability over perfection is something that I've been bringing up multiple times again and again because it's important that you are sustainable even if that means you are imperfect. If you are going to eat out once or twice or even more than that per week, but that means that on a long enough time horizon, you're going to lose weight, do that. I'll say that again. If you know that you're the type of person that needs a type of way to stay consistent and enjoy the process, even if that means you're going to go off plan some days, do it, because the alternative is you try to be perfect. Then 2 weeks in, you realize that you hate this and you physically can't even bring yourself to do that. It's not emotionally weak for you to admit that you're not perfect. Just eat to where you can actually sustain a reasonable path to hitting your goals, even if that takes a little bit longer. Because the end outcome that you're going for is being lean, being healthy, whatever the case is. And once you get to that outcome, it doesn't matter if it took you 6 months or a year or even more. Just work towards your goals slowly but surely. And I promise you, you will not regret having taken the time that you did to get to your goal. Now, what do you actually look for when you eat fast food restaurants? And I'll touch on alcohol at the end as well. But starting with fast foods, you can eat fast food when you go out. The nutritional data is public for most fast food restaurants. So I personally actually sometimes prefer going to a fast food restaurant over a regular restaurant. Some restaurants don't publish the nutritional data. Fast food restaurants do. So it's pretty easy for you to estimate how much you're going to be eating at a fast food restaurant and then work around that for the rest of your day, bank calories and such. Again, don't over restrict yourself on that. Moderation is crucial though. Like, yes, a fast food restaurant might be 600 calories, get you 80 grams of protein or whatever. It's still going to be packed with a shit ton of sodium and preservatives. So don't assume that you're eating healthy because you're eating fast food that's in your macros. Like, that's absurd to assume that eating 600 calories of a donut is going to be the same as eating 600 calories of chicken. Like, it's just not a reasonable assumption to make. But some of my top picks for fast food restaurants that are pretty good about keeping you full, tasty, and satiated. This is completely up to you. Like, you eat whatever you want. Any fast food restaurant can be worked into your goals as long as you're mindful of how many calories you're eating and whether or not that fits into your plan. But I personally like Taco Bell a lot. The Crunchwrap is just over 500 calories and super satiating. Doritos Locos Tacos is just under 200 calories, which when I found out, I thought that was absolutely insane. Chipotle is a great one. If you avoid the fatty items like the sour cream, guac, and whatnot, the guac is good for you, by the way, but just calorically, not so much. You can get to a great bowl for like 600 calories, over 60 grams of protein, super satiating, tastes really great. Panda Express also has great options for protein sources that are going to keep you satiated. Other than that, there's not much else I can think of off the top of my head, but any fast food restaurant is great. You just need to know how much you're eating and plan accordingly. Watching the sauce is one recommendation to make sure, regardless. Fast food restaurants are notorious for having insane amounts of calories hidden in the sauce. Cane's is a big one. If you go to Cane's, you know you can't have Cane's without the sauce, but the sauce racks up calories so fast, it's absurd. So be sure to watch the amount of sauce that you're having. The reason I like Taco Bell is because their sauce is basically 0 calories. So it's a great one in the sense that you don't have to really watch that sauce as much. But ranch, for example, extremely high calories. Mayo's usually high calories. Try to get those sauces on the side if you can and just watch for them because it's one way that many people neglect and go over their caloric budget. And then diet soda. So people these days sometimes are confused whether diet soda is bad for you or they cause cancer, aspartame is bad. In general, you don't have to worry about diet soda causing cancer. Aspartame is 200 times sweeter than sugar. If you don't know what aspartame is the artificial sweetener that's present in diet sodas and substitute for sugar. Aspartame is 200 times sweeter than sugar. So the amount of aspartame in your drink is so low, you're basically drinking carbonated water. Now, is a diet soda better than drinking water? Obviously not. But if you're going to drink a full sugar soda that's going to cost you 500 calories of straight processed sugar, please just drink the diet soda that tastes 99% like the regular soda, but gives you 99% more benefit in terms of your fitness goals and your health. Diet soda is extremely good for cutting, especially. The carbonation, there's some caffeine in there, helps me personally stay satiated, helps kill my cravings, and the only way that a diet soda is actually going to cause any significant harm, I believe the upper limit is like 14 cans a day. So if you're anything like a normal, sane person, don't worry about diet soda. It's really helpful for your diet. Please use it. Now, going over to restaurants, the biggest thing with restaurants is I mentioned that nutritional data sometimes might not be public. And even if it is public, restaurants is a little bit harder for them to be more accurate because you don't know how much butter they're putting, you don't know the portion sizing differences. It's going to be very hard for you to track restaurant food well, so accepting imperfection is key. This has been a common theme with any type of restaurant, even with fast food. Like, it's not going to be perfect, it's going to be slightly off. Restaurants more so, especially if they don't have nutritional information. You can eyeball certain things, but just assume that you're going to be imperfect because that's probably what's going to happen. Best way to work around that is just have a buffer. For example, if I know that I'm going to be consuming 1700 calories in a day and I go to the restaurant and the menu says like 700 calories, I have 700 calories left, Try to keep a buffer. I want to say like 15% is a good one, but again, that's totally arbitrary. Do whatever you want, do your own research. A buffer is a good way for you to make sure that you're not going overboard. If anything, you just eat a little bit less calories and you lose weight faster. So that's a win win. Then, other tips around restaurants. I mentioned the wash the sauce, another huge thing in restaurants. If you can ask for things to be like grilled instead of fried, that's extremely helpful. Having the sauce on the side, butter, watching out for those types of things. Lean protein is always going to be the fatty protein in terms of calories. Load up on veggies so that you stay satiated and there's enough volume in your meal while you don't have to skimp out on, like, you don't have to feel hungry by the end of the meal because you're actually filling your veggies up with volume, and that gives you some fiber as well. Ultimately, the name of the game when you go to a restaurant is just damage control. I keep saying imperfection is something you're just gonna have to accept. And when you go to a restaurant, you just gotta be thinking like, okay, I'm going to have a meal, I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm gonna minimize the amount that this is gonna affect my progress. So if I'm going to a restaurant, like I'll take a random run, PF Chang's for example, I'm gonna look at all the options. I personally like whatever the shrimp option is. Shrimp is a pretty lean source of protein. Get white rice on the side instead of like chow mein or something like that. The portion is pretty huge. Protein is up there. It keeps me satiated. Like, there are other ways to go about this, but just watching the menu, making sure that you're going for objectively better options is a great way to go about things. Smart swaps are there for almost anything, so please use them and don't assume that you have to have a flavorless meal or you just have to completely reject your plan. There's a continuum, not a binary of be fat or eat grass, basically. Like, there's much more alternatives in that space, and there's a spectrum of how far you want to push it regarding the enjoyment of your food. Now, last thing I want to touch on is alcohol. So, alcohol is something that people mostly do not think of when they're cutting. Food is obviously an important thing to consider when you're trying to lose weight or cut, but people neglect alcohol and how much they consume that. Alcohol is 7 calories per gram, so it is almost as calorically dense as fat, which is 9 calories per gram. Just for your reference, carbs are 4 calories per gram, and protein is also 4 calories per gram. But all that to say, alcohol is extremely calorically dense. On top of that, it suppresses fat oxidation by about 73%. So what that means is when your body is looking to burn fat, it gets oxidized. So alcohol actually suppresses that fat oxidation for, I think, like 12 to 13 hours. I could be wrong, but that means that your body is more likely to store that excess energy that you might have eaten rather than use it and burn it up. So alcohol is kind of like a double negative here where it's super calorically dense, suppresses fat oxidation. But the name of the game that we're trying to say here is just sustainability. So if you are going to drink, just try to minimize the damage control, like we were talking about. That means chasing certain types of liquors that might be lesser in calories. The big one is mixers. If you're going to be going for like a sugary juice or something like that, please don't do that. Have it with a diet soda or something. Do it with like a club soda. Whatever is going to make it so that you can still have that experience with your friends. You can be social, you can have fun, but you don't need to go overboard with it, assuming that you needed that sugary mixer for the experience to be good, right? Like, keep that North Star in mind. If you're going out for a meal, this applies to all food as well, not just alcohol. If you're going out for a meal with your friends or whatnot, you're going there to have fun. You're not going there to eat the most unhealthy thing you can. Whether you had the fettuccine alfredo or you had the grilled chicken, at the end of the night, you're just going to remember the time you had with your friends. So don't obsess over the fact that, these guys are all eating the best food. I'm just eating this like slightly worse, but still also tastes okay food. Like, obviously, there is a limit to where I wouldn't go to a restaurant and just order grilled chicken right now. I would go for an option that might be a little bit more calorically dense than that, but still make me feel good about what I'm eating. I'm enjoying the meal, I'm enjoying the time. But keep that goal in mind. All of this is to say that yes, eating out while on a diet will definitely require a significant amount of self control. And the reason that I make this video is because it requires so much self control. People are fat. On average, people are quite unhealthy. Obesity rates are rising. There's a reason that most people are not able to get fit in today's day and age when everything is so damn calorically dense and sauces are like 200 calories per like 2 tablespoons or 1 tablespoon or whatever. But you can still hit your goals while enjoying the process if you're smart about it. There's always a smart swap for something that you want to eat. Literally always. Ice cream, go for a Ninja Creamy. It's the best invention on the planet. Air fryers, that actually might be the first one. I lied. Air fryers are super great. All of that is just to say you can hit your goals in a way that makes sense for you. Chase sustainability over perfection, because the worst thing you can do for yourself is restrict yourself so much to the point where you can't even stick to the diet and you ultimately quit.